When police found Lanny Horwitz slumped over in his lavish Jupiter, Florida bathroom, shot once through the head, it looked like a suicide. But the moment investigators looked closer, the facade shattered. This wasn't just a killing. It was a family unraveling. And at the heart of it, stood someone no one ever suspected. Until it was too late. Lanny Horwitz was the kind of man who seemed untouchable. A wealthy investor with political connections, a taste for expensive toys, and a history of getting exactly what he wanted. He owned boats, houses, and people, figuratively and sometimes literally. Even his closest friends whispered that Lanny was a manipulator. Charming on the outside, calculating underneath. He had a son, Radley Horwitz, a quiet, awkward man in his early 30s. People said Radley was off. Never quite present. He was lanky, socially clumsy, with a strange gaze and a stutter that made conversation painful to watch. Lanny often spoke about Radley in public, mocking his intellect, criticizing him as a failure who couldn't even finish college without breaking down. To outsiders, it seemed like Lanny kept his son around out of pity. But inside the family, Radley was a ghost. Ignored. Overlooked. Until his father needed someone to control. And then, Lanny's ex-wife, Donna, re-entered the picture. Fresh out of rehab, estranged for years, she was suddenly living in Lanny's house again. Rumor had it she'd asked to move back in. But others said Lanny wanted her there, not out of love, but control. And within weeks, the house grew darker. Radley stayed locked in his room. Donna looked perpetually frightened. And Lanny? Lanny strutted through that house like a king whose court had no voice. Until the morning his brains were found on the bathroom mirror. When police arrived, Radley was already outside, sitting on the back patio, pale and shaking. He told them he heard a gunshot. That he ran upstairs and found his father dead. That he didn't touch anything. That maybe, just maybe, his dad had finally pulled the trigger on his own. Officers entered the scene cautiously. And that's when the inconsistencies began. There was no gun in Lanny's hand. It was neatly placed on the floor by the sink. No gunshot residue on Lanny's hands. But there was, on someone else's. And Donna? She wasn't crying. She was pacing. Nervous. Babbling about her son. Her eyes darted between the cops and Radley like she was caught between two killers. An autopsy confirmed it. This was no suicide. Someone had pressed the .38 revolver against Lanny's skull. Execution style. But the motive? Hidden. Buried beneath decades of manipulation and secrets. Radley was arrested days later. At first, he denied everything. But under pressure, he confessed, halfway. Said he held the gun. Said Donna screamed. Said Lanny deserved it. But his version changed every hour. The prosecution painted Radley as a troubled, resentful son who finally snapped. They brought up mental illness, erratic behavior, and journals filled with disturbing entries. In one, Radley wrote, "He doesn't see me. He never did. He broke her. And now he wants to break me." The defense countered with something shocking: Radley was abused. Mentally. Emotionally. For years. By a father who isolated him. Kept him medicated. And used him like a pawn. But the most damning moment came when Donna took the stand. She wept. Said she loved Lanny. That she was devastated. That Radley had always been unstable, and she feared what he might do. The jury stared at her, sympathetic. They believed her. Radley was convicted of first-degree murder. Radley was led away in cuffs, numb and silent. Justice, it seemed, had been served. Until a sealed letter arrived at the DA's office, 6 months later. It was unsigned. Handwritten. Shaky. But its contents? Chilling. I lied on the stand. I saw it happen. He wasn't holding the gun. I was. Lanny was going to hurt me again. I panicked. Radley tried to stop me, not help me. And I let him take the fall. I don't deserve to be free. The DA reopened the file quietly. Investigators combed through old evidence, phone records, surveillance footage, even the placement of gunpowder on clothing. And what they found changed everything. Radley's shirt had no residue. But Donna's nightgown, submitted but never tested, was riddled with microscopic particles. Why hadn't it been analyzed? Why had the case moved so quickly? And most importantly, had Radley been sacrificed for his mother's freedom? He was the invisible son. The family disgrace. But maybe he was the only innocent one all along. Now the world watches and waits. Will Radley finally be free? Or did the truth die with the only person who could prove it? In a house built on control and silence, justice doesn't always arrive loud. Sometimes, it creeps in through letters, whispers, and the truths people bury. Never underestimate the quiet ones. They're often the only ones still listening. They called him guilty. Sent him away without a second glance. But now, the woman who put him behind bars has vanished. And what lies buried in the ruins of this family is darker than anyone imagined. Donna Horwitz was last seen watering her roses. Neighbors say she looked calm, almost relieved. Not like a woman running, but one who had already let go. Her car was still in the garage. Keys on the counter. And the back door? Left open. It wasn't until the police found a strand of gray hair on the fence, along with blood on the corner post, that they realized Donna didn't disappear. She was taken. Or worse, someone wanted it to look that way. Now, with Radley's retrial set to begin in 3 weeks, his only alibi, the only person who knew the full truth, was either dead or in hiding. As the investigation widened, the prosecution's original case began to crumble. Lanny Horwitz wasn't just a wealthy businessman. He was a control freak. A serial manipulator. One ex-girlfriend described him as a smiling hurricane. He'd charm you, then gaslight you until you question reality. And if you tried to leave, he'd make sure you had nothing left. Court records revealed multiple restraining orders filed, and later mysteriously dropped, by women Lanny dated after his divorce. One woman claimed she saw Lanny slam Radley against a wall during a discipline session. Another swore Donna once showed up at her door, bruised, barefoot, whispering, "He's watching me." Why was none of this allowed into Radley's first trial? Why were these witnesses silenced? Because back then, Lanny had power. But now, Lanny was 6 feet under. And the truth was clawing its way out of the grave. The courtroom was silent when Radley was brought in. Gone was the skittish young man from years ago. He looked older, sharper. But his eyes still held that same haunted depth. His new legal team presented a timeline. The lack of residue on Radley's clothes. The confession letter from Donna. The missing evidence. And a phone call made from Donna's cell 8 minutes after Lanny's estimated time of death. The call? To a crisis hotline. She didn't say much. Just whispered, "I did it. He's gone." Then hung up. Voice analysis confirmed it was Donna. The courtroom gasped. And when the judge allowed the recording into evidence, the tides shifted. Radley's original conviction was vacated. He was released pending a full investigation. But there was one problem. Where was Donna? 2 weeks later, detectives received an anonymous tip. It led them to a small bank in Palm Beach Gardens. Inside a safety deposit box registered under Donna S. Horwitz, they found a thumb drive, a handwritten journal, and a key to a storage unit across town. On the drive was a video. A confession. Donna, visibly shaken, sits in a dimly lit bedroom. Her hands tremble. Her voice quivers. "I loved him once. But he broke me. Over and over. He told me if I ever left, he'd take Radley down with me. So I stayed. And I watched him destroy my son piece by piece. That night, Lanny said he was putting Radley in an institution. He called it a favor. I snapped. I went upstairs, and I ended it. Radley came in just after. He begged me to call the police. But I was too scared. So I told them it was him. I thought I could fix it later. But I never did. The journal mirrored every detail. Down to the minute. In the storage unit, inside was the final piece. Donna's blood-stained nightgown, hidden in a vacuum-sealed bag. The one never tested in the first trial. All of it, undeniable. Radley was innocent. With mounting evidence and public outrage, the state officially dropped all charges against Radley Horwitz. The man once branded a parasital psychopath was now free. But his words, outside the courthouse, weren't what the crowd expected. She still lied. She still let me rot. You can say I'm free. But she took everything. Then came a question from a reporter. If you could speak to your mother right now, what would you say? Radley paused, looked into the cameras, and said, I already have. She just doesn't know it yet. That night, a security guard patrolling a dock in Fort Lauderdale reported something strange. A woman, frail, with gray hair, was sitting alone on the pier. She looked soaked, confused. When he approached, she vanished. But in her place, was a scarf. The same scarf Donna was seen wearing in a photo dated one day before her disappearance. Fingerprint tests were inconclusive. But nearby, on a bench under the dock lights, carved into the wood, was a single word. Forgive. No one's seen Donna Horwitz since. Radley moved out of Florida weeks later. No public statements. No book deals. No interviews. Just gone. But then, earlier this year, a cryptic podcast surfaced on the dark web. A single voice. Male. Calm. Calculated. He tells the story of a family destroyed by silence. Of a woman who ran from justice. And at the end, he says something bone-chilling. You can only run from guilt so long. Eventually, it finds you. And when it does, it doesn't knock. The Horwitz family was built on money, power, and appearances. But underneath it all, was fear. Fear of being seen. Of being believed. And of what we become when those we trust betray us. But this story isn't over. Because just last week, a body washed ashore in Delray Beach. The identity? Still unknown. But in the victim's pocket was a photo of Radley and Donna. Smiling. Years ago. Before the killing. Before the lies. Before the house turned into a crime scene. A confession. A release. A disappearance. Justice seemed to come and go. But when a body washed up with a photo tied to a past no one could forget, the question became not who killed Lanny Horwitz, but who's still cleaning up the mess. July 14, 2023. 6:32 a.m. A fisherman near Atlantic Dunes Park in Delray Beach stumbled across something floating in the shallows. At first, he thought it was driftwood. Until the current flipped it over, and the bloated outline of a human face stared back. The medical examiner's report was grim, male, mid to late 30s. No immediate signs of trauma. Cause of death, still pending. But what turned a routine John Doe case into a media firestorm, was what police found in his waterlogged jacket. A photo, aged and wrinkled, of a young Radley and Donna Horwitz, smiling on a beach. A flash drive, wrapped in a plastic sandwich bag. And a note. Smudged ink. 6 words. He knows. She's not finished yet. The press went wild. Was this victim connected to the Horwitz case? And who was he? Weeks passed with no clear answers. Until Tessa Langley entered the picture. Tessa was a freelance journalist with a reputation for chasing impossible stories. She'd covered international fraud rings, political blackmail cases, and cult survivors. But she'd never touched the Horwitz murder. Not until she received an unmarked envelope. Inside, a printed transcript of the confession Donna left behind, and something else. Coordinates. To a storage unit in Miami. Tessa followed the lead. And what she found changed everything. Inside the unit, hidden in a hollowed-out speaker cabinet, were dozens of audio tapes, dated from the early 2000s to 2011. Every single one featured Lanny Horwitz's voice. Commanding. Cold. Calculating. In one tape, he discusses how to shift assets to avoid taxes. In another, he threatens a woman with deportation unless she keeps her mouth shut. But the most damning? A scratchy, nearly unrecognizable recording dated 3 months before his murder. If Donna runs her mouth, she's dead. If Radley opens his mouth, he's committed. Either way, I win. Tessa handed everything to the FBI. But someone was already watching. The body from the beach was identified. His name, Milo Danner. Former private investigator. Once hired, briefly, by Lanny Horwitz during his divorce battle with Donna. Records showed Milo had been working independently in recent years. Digging into cold cases, connecting dots law enforcement ignored. His laptop, recovered from his apartment, contained files labeled Horwitz/insurance, Donna flight risk, and one final folder. Radley_revenge_op. Inside were surveillance photos taken over the last 6 months. All of Radley. In different states. Different names. Different lives. He was hiding in plain sight. But Milo wasn't tracking him to expose him. He was trying to warn him. Because someone else was watching both of them. Part 15, Donna's Shadow. An FBI informant later revealed that shortly after Donna's disappearance, 2 offshore accounts linked to her name were activated, for the first time in over a decade. Withdrawals were made in Slovenia, then Spain, and finally, Colombia. Interpol placed her in Medellin just 4 months ago, checking into a medical clinic under an alias. Facial recognition flagged the match, but by the time authorities arrived, she was gone. Again. But what was she running from now? Why hide, after clearing her son? Unless she wasn't finished. Radley Horwitz was officially declared cleared of all charges. He lived quietly in Oregon under the name Eli Becker. He worked part-time at a bookstore. Kept his head down. Avoided questions. Until Tessa Langley tracked him down. She brought the tapes. The drive. The journal. Everything Milo had collected before he died. And she told him one thing. She's still alive. She's still playing. And someone is dying every time she slips away. Radley didn't flinch. Didn't speak. He simply picked up the photo of him and his mother, now stained and bent from the ocean, and whispered, "Then it's time I stopped hiding." He disappeared that night. Left no trace. But 2 weeks later, a package arrived at Tessa's office in Manhattan. Inside, a silver revolver. A plane ticket to Cartagena, Colombia. And a note. "She taught me how to disappear. Now I'll teach her how it feels." For years, Radley was the prisoner. Now, he's the hunter. The Horwitz family burned down their legacy. But from those ashes, someone is writing a new ending. And this time, it won't end in court. For a decade, the truth was buried. A son convicted. A mother vanished. A killer unpunished. But now, as 2 lives hurtle toward one final confrontation, the story of the Horwitz family will end. Not in a courtroom, but in the shadows of a city where no one stays lost forever. The streets of Cartagena pulse with life, vendors shouting, tourists laughing, music spilling from every alley. But in the heart of Getsemani, past the colonial walls, a rented apartment sits dark. Inside, Donna Horwitz hasn't left in days. She watches the news in English. Knows about the discovery of Milo's body. Knows the tapes are out. Knows the FBI is circling her like vultures. But she isn't running. Not anymore. She keeps a .22 pistol in the drawer by her bed. And a bag packed at the door. Because he is coming. And Donna knows exactly who sent him. Radley Horwitz hasn't spoken to another soul in 3 weeks. Not since boarding the plane. Not since slipping through customs with a fake passport and a new name. He walks the streets like a ghost, just another foreigner melting into Cartagena's heat. But his eyes? Always watching. He stays 3 blocks away from his mother's apartment. Observes her patterns. Morning coffee. Curtains drawn by noon. Lights off by 9 p.m. Every day the same. Except today. Today, she left. For the first time. To the pier. The same one where she used to take him when he was small. Where she once told him, "If you ever get lost, stay where I can find you." He follows. The pier is quiet at dusk. Donna sits on the edge, staring into the waves. Radley approaches slowly. No weapon. No rage. Just the hollow weight of everything she took. She turns. Doesn't scream. Doesn't run. Just looks at him, eyes wet, voice cracked. "You found me." Radley says nothing. Just sits beside her. For a long time, they say nothing. Then she breaks. "I didn't mean for it to go that far. I thought I could fix it. I thought I could protect you." Radley finally speaks. "By letting me rot for 10 years? She flinches. "I was weak." He nods. "You still are." She pulls something from her coat. A flash drive. It's everything. More than the tapes. More than the files. Lanny's accounts. Offshore assets. Names of people he paid off. She holds it out to him. But he doesn't take it. "That's not why I came." A long silence. "Then why?" she whispers. Radley leans in. And for the first time in his life, he forgives her. "Because I didn't want to become him." Radley walks away. He never looks back. He boards a plane under a new name, leaves Colombia behind forever. But Donna? She stays on that pier. Until night falls. And when she returns to her apartment, it's been ransacked. The .22 is missing. So is the bag by the door. She runs to the bathroom, checks the medicine cabinet. Empty. A single message is scrawled on the mirror in red lipstick. "Your freedom was borrowed. Time's up." 2 weeks later, authorities found Donna Horwitz's body at the base of a cliff outside Medellin. Fell. Jumped. Pushed. They ruled it a suicide. But locals whispered about a man seen walking away from the cliff edge at dawn. No cameras. No name. Just a soft-spoken foreigner with tired eyes, and no luggage. The flash drive was mailed anonymously to the U.S. Attorney's Office in Miami. Inside, evidence implicating 3 former law enforcement officers, a Palm Beach judge, and 2 of Lanny Horwitz's business partners in a decades-long racketeering scheme. 5 arrests followed. 2 resignations. And a reopened investigation into Radley's original trial. Some stories end in gavel strikes. Others in bullets or cell bars. But this one ended with a choice. To become the villain. Or to end the cycle. Radley Horwitz was never heard from again. Some say he became a monk in Thailand. Others believe he's dead. But every year, on the anniversary of Lanny's death, someone leaves a white rose outside the Palm Beach County Courthouse. And no one ever sees who. Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes, it walks away.